Hey guys, I'm Sai and welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show. And we are live doing an extra show talking tonight's UFC card from Fight Island, which included a few British fighters, a very fun card to watch, and an impressive performance in the main event again, for second time in a couple of days that we've had a really impressive main event performance by Michael Chiesa today, following on from Max Holloway on the weekend. But this show is available live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter or Periscope. So spread the word, share it with people, get involved. But A.C.E Podcast Nation also your home to many other great shows and series featuring top guests, expert analysts, and more. So do give us a follow on social media. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's still the most direct way to support the channel and the show. And of course, if you want to stick to MMA and streamline your experience, you can follow the Danny Batten Fight Show on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Danny Batten FS. The links to everything's in the description as well. But with no further ado, joining me is the legend himself, former Cage Warriors champion, a true legend of UK MMA. It is Mr. Danny Batten. Welcome, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, right. Sorry, listeners. Yeah, very, very good. A little bit different having a fight show to cover midweek, but it's all good.
Yeah, we don't often get the opportunity to watch the UFC live. The closest thing we normally get is like a Cage Warriors show and stuff like that. But it's nice, isn't it, to watch a show and then go live straight after, talk about
Sure.
it. I wish we could do it more often, but I'm too old and I have too many kids to stay up till like 5, 6 in the morning. Like the main card on Saturday for the Conor McGregor card starts at 3 in the UK. There's no way I could stay up that late, mate. No way. So we'll be back in our normal slot of recording Sunday out Wednesday. And of course, we got a very special guest joining us next week for next week's show. And that is Cage Warriors flyweight champion, Mr. Jake Hadley. I know you're excited to
Yeah,
to
that's
Jake,
good.
mate.
Yeah. I've never spoke to him in person, and it'd be great to get to know the character who's no doubt going to be famous, super famous in the very near future. I have no doubts about that with this young talent.
Yeah, he's a very, very impressive young man, and of course, don't think it'll be long till we see him in the UFC. To be perfectly honest, and I'm looking forward to talking to him, talk about his career and his rise to the championship, his championship fight with Luke Shanks recently, and of course, then we also have the Conor McGregor card fights and all the other fights to talk about, which will be very interesting. But let's get into tonight's UFC. What were your overall just thoughts of the show? Did you enjoy it? What did you think of the fights, just generally?
Yeah. I mean, we had some finishes, and we had some fights that went the distance, which were really close technically. There were some good performances. Yeah, I just think we had been a little bit spoilt with that Holloway Qatar match, but yeah, nevertheless, it was still a good event with some good performances.
Yeah, 100%. So as you know, regular listeners will know, we don't normally talk too much about the prelims unless there's some British talent or some talent that we're particularly keeping an eye on taking part. And there was a few of those in tonight's prelims. First and foremost, we had Khabib's brother fought Sergei Morozov, with Khabib's brother Umar picking up the victory. I don't know if it's his brother or his cousin, so I apologise about that. But he won via a rear naked choke towards the end of the second round. Looked very impressive, very similar to Khabib in many ways. Khabib was there as well, which I found very interesting because obviously a certain Mr. McGregor arrived in Dubai earlier on today. So I wonder if they'll cross paths and say hello, but you never know. But yeah, overall, a good performance by Umar. I expected him to win, honestly, and I think the UFC probably expected him to win, judging by the fact that he was only second fight in, I think. And then we had what, in my opinion, I know you haven't seen this one, mate, but in my opinion, this was fight of the night easily. It was such a good fight, phenomenal. Welshman Mason Jones was defeated by Mike Davis by unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. It was a close fight, a very enjoyable fight. I thought, and I know a few other people thought, that Mason won. And, I did wonder if I was being a bit biased, mate, because obviously he's a friend of the show, he's been on before, came on with his title belts. But I didn't know if I was being biased, but having spoken to you and you've spoken to a couple of people and I've spoken to a couple of other fighters, and everyone seems to be of the same opinion that Mason won 2 rounds and Mike Davis won the other. It's, it is what it is, I guess. Mason, as you'd expect, took it on the chin, didn't complain, but he was very impressive, mate. It's just the speed and the constant pressure for 3 rounds, just non-stop pushing forward. You've got to be. You must be so fit.
Yeah.
But, look, it's disappointing from the fact that he's lost his unbeaten record. It's his debut in the UFC. It's not like the fairy tale debut that perhaps we all expected, that you're hoping for. But he was so impressive in defeat that I don't think he's got anything to worry about too much.
I mean, look, if he's had a great performance and he feels that within himself, and especially that many people are commenting that they feel that he won 2 of the 3 rounds. I mean, it's obviously a very, very close fight. There's a few good things that can come of that. One, that he's put up a great performance no matter what, and it was that close that some people think that he edged it. And the other part is that he no longer has to carry that pressure of trying to maintain that unbeaten record.
Yeah.
That could actually, in a weird way, do wonders for him. Although he seemed to fight like he had no care in the world what his record was, because he just puts everything on the line, every punch, every kick, every knee, every takedown attempt. He puts everything into everything that he does. So look, he's going to have a fantastic career. Let's not, be moping about that defeat so much. It was a great performance, nevertheless, it seems. And I'll have more to say about it, obviously, when I watch it.
Yeah, loads of positives to take, mate. And definitely fight of the night for me. It was phenomenal fight for both guys. Like Mike Davis impressed me as well. I got to say, I didn't know a great deal about him beforehand, and I thought he was outstanding as well. So I'll be keeping a very close eye, obviously, on both those guys. Excuse me, going forward, very, very good. Next up, we had Figueiredo, the current flyweight champion. His brother, Francisco, defeated Jerome Riviera by unanimous decision. Again, it was 29-28 across the board. But it was really impressive. Figueiredo looked the real deal, I got to say. His BJJ, as you'd expect, was sensational. He was so quick. A really, really enjoyable fight, and I think you'll enjoy that one because there's a lot of things you want. Gaz there says Mason was robbed. Great fight, easily the fight of the night, he says. So seems to be the general consensus. To be fair, okay, and then we had Ricky Simon defeated Italian Gaetano Pirello via submission with an arm triangle choke 4 minutes into the second round. This was another fun fight. Ricky Simon, he is the real deal, mate. He is really... He's fought some incredible names already in his career, which is why I was very surprised that he was on the prelims, just because of some of the fighters that he's fought. And I think he's beaten a couple of them. It's unbelievable, but his wrestling is sensational, mate. Honestly, about as good as I've seen from any fighter at the moment. It was just non-stop quality. So obviously he won tonight versus Pirello. Before that he beat Ray Borg. He lost to Rob Font, who obviously we saw recently was on fire, looked very, very good. He lost to Uriah Faber. And then he also lost to... he beat Murab Dishvali. So like you say, some big names in there. He's beaten some of them, he's lost to some of them. But he's definitely improved his striking as well, going by tonight's performance. So I'll be an interesting one. Again, mate, I think you'll really appreciate the wrestling skills on the show.
Right.
So I'll be on Sunday. We'll have a quick chat about that and see what you make of some of those prelim fights. But let's move on to the fights that you watched. Starting with the Akhmedov versus Britishman Tom Breeze. This opened the main card due to the time constraints, was moved off the prelims, and I thought Tom Breeze did really, really well, and I thought he was a bit unfortunate in the end. He lost via an arm triangle choke about 1:40 into the second round, but I felt a bit sorry for him. Not sorry for him, but I felt for him because he really went all out for some tricky submissions to pull off. He nearly got a calf, I think it was a calf slicer in the first round, but he looked good until they made an error and paid for it.
Yeah, he did. He had a few submission attempts. Clearly, he's working on his grappling and getting more and more confidence there, and he was seizing any opportunities that he had. Very quite early on, he got taken down. He got caught with in a deep single entry. Went down and tried to snag a guillotine, arming guillotine. Wasn't quite there for him. Kind of got a bit smothered out in the half guard, being underneath. Akhmedov was performing very, very nicely there, but then he had a little bit of an open guard and closed guard, and he was actually working quite well off his back regards throwing up some submissions, looking dangerous, so that Akhmedov couldn't just go ahead and ground and pound him so freely. You had lots of threats of submissions and scrambles to get back on top to deal with as well with Tom Breeze. But Tom Breeze, with his persistence, did actually end up getting the top position himself and end up momentarily taking Akhmedov's back at the end of the first round, and that must have given him loads of confidence. The fact that he could, get on a top position briefly and then actually get into a back take on him. And it was actually looking like there could have potentially been a finish there had he had another 30 seconds or a minute in that solid position to really try and work some magic with his submissions that he's clearly improving with, but it wasn't to be. Now, in the second round, I ended up having some interesting exchanges. Again, picking up on the single, he defended it really well, had to deal with deep double up against the fence that he dealt with, and Magny went back to a single. Again, continuing to deal with that, and then countered it in a really unusual way, and sort of like went up round the back into a knee splicer. And it looked like it could potentially have been really, really nasty. It just didn't quite fall in place for him. And after a brief moment after that, he looked like he was beginning to flag a little bit, maybe put too much energy into trying to get that finish, and was looking a little bit exasperated, had his arms in a bad position and quickly got put into an arm triangle situation, which ain't an easy fix, especially if you're gassing a little bit. Now, a couple of times the ref was lifting his hands. He actually looked like he was out a little sooner than he tapped.
That was, wasn't it?
Yeah, but maybe the ref was seeing his face and he could see that, he was blinking and, showing all the signs of being, conscious enough to be, resisting it safely. That's the only thing I could think of. The ref looked up pretty on it. He was lifting his arm. He obviously felt that he was still okay. And he must have been, because Tom chose to tap out eventually. So he must have had his faculties about him. But yeah, it is disappointing. But look, that guy is top tier level. They both looked in amazing shape physically. They both pulled off some great things, and they both had the opportunities. It's just that, unfortunately for Tom Breeze, when Akhmedov got his opportunity for a submission, he put it to bed and finished him. But yeah, I mean, some good signs there. If you're going to look at this unfortunate situation that he's got this loss, he has to look at the positives, that he pulled off some great moves that were really close and it just wasn't quite there for him. But I think with a little bit more polishing, a little bit more confidence for which he's gaining, he'll be getting the wins with those submission attempts that he's been trying to pull off.
Yeah. Did you feel like he made an error to get into that position, which he obviously lost from the arm triangle choke? Did he make a mistake to get into that position just before?
I just think it was an opportunistic situation. He was trying to defend the single, and he ended up bending right over the back, and he had the leg laced. And I just think it was just suddenly there for him. He rolled through to just go for it. I mean, you got to respect a guy that's trying to put the fight away. But he just looked a little bit gassed after that. He looked quite heavily muscled, Tom Breeze, and you got to keep pushing oxygen to those big muscle sets. And maybe if he tried to muscle through on that, and rather than having pure technique, it perhaps left him a little exasperated, and for which he give away position very, very quickly after that exchange and gets caught in that arm triangle situation.
Yeah, I think so. I think ultimately what happens is, and what we've seen maybe with some of the British guys who've come over into the UFC in recent months, and some top tier guys as well, is that the UFC is a step up from Cage Warriors. Like even the fighters at the bottom of the tree, so to speak, a lot of them are very, very, very capable. Very, some of them are top level at certain disciplines and stuff like that. Akhmedov is a very experienced fighter, and I know Tom Breeze is an experienced fighter and he's very good at what he does. I felt he put on a good performance ultimately, and I think he was unlucky. Next up, we had Laurent Murphy, another Brit, versus Douglas Silva de Andrade, with Murphy picking up the win by unanimous decision this time, 29-28, 29-28, 30-27. I thought Laurent Murphy was very impressive.
Yeah, I'm going to
good.
be watching this kid's career. He really, really did impress me. Yeah, he looks quite big at the weight. He looks energetic at the weight. I really like the way he holds his striking form. And the thing that also I like about his striking, that he's both southpaw and orthodox. And not only does he start his combinations, he actually switches his stance in combination, which adds length to your combination when someone's trying to backstep and trying to retract away from you. Nevertheless, that Andrade is a very, 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 very good fighter, very, very good striker. He was a little off balance when he's throwing these low point kicks. This is something that when we was watching it live, we picked up as a little off balance, a little stiff in his kicking, and just falling a little short with his hands. And maybe this is because Laurent Murphy is so naturally bigger than him. Yes. Although Andrade was so muscular, he was giving away quite a bit on the reach and the height front, and I think that was beginning to become telling over the course of those rounds. But Laurent Murphy really, really impressed me. I think we're going to see some good and some big things from this kid. I didn't remember looking at his age, but to me that would be quite important. If he's young enough, he could gain the experience and be a real threat in the coming years.
Laurent Murphy.
Yeah. Or the other guy. What was his age?
Oh, let's have a look. Let's have a look.
I don't remember seeing
I actually thought Douglas
29
was quite impressive as well. I thought he looked pretty good. Like, I know you picked out some technical issues with like some of his kicks being off balance and stuff, but I thought actually his performance outside of that was pretty good. There was certainly something there to work with. It was
bags of cardio. Really looked strong with that frame. Yeah, and was doing really large combinations himself, which he has to do to make up for the height and reach deficit that he was giving away. So he had to come in big with some combinations, and he had some successes there. He really, really did. By no means was this a one-sided affair. It was nail biting all the way through. But I still maintain that Murphy, he's going to be something. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, he made a very impressive performance tonight. It was. Do you think that de Andrade could have done a bit more, and do you think that Laurent Murphy will be a little bit disappointed that he couldn't get a finish?
He's in his mid-30s now, so I think he'd be disappointed that any loss that he has, that's quite a bit of redemption that he has to do in his fight record to try and get himself back into relevancy. So on that front, I bet you that's disappointing, and any loss is disappointing at any time in your career. But he performed well. That's what he's got to take from that. It was still close throughout each of those rounds. He was in it to win it at all times. There was never a time when he was touching his shots in. He was throwing with full figure at all times. So he shouldn't be disappointed, other than the fact that it is a loss nevertheless, and it takes a little bit of work and notching up some more wins to sort of like make that one be buried, so to speak.
You reckon that Laurent will be a bit disappointed that he couldn't pick up a finish, or do you think just the overall performance was that good that
No, I mean finish. Finishes are sort of like the cherry on top sort of thing. The finishes sort of like just present themselves predominantly, and you just got to be an opportunist to take them when they're there. The opportunity for the finish just wasn't really there in any clear way. Andrade was very footwork orientated, so that can make it quite hard to make any of your shots land. He did have some really nice leg kicks that perhaps could have led to some immobility issues for Andrade, but none of them were consequential enough to take away that mobility. So, it made it more of a tit for tat striking match.
I felt like he could have gone with the leg kicks a bit more, because I felt like they did cause him some problems when he did let him go, but it just felt sometimes as if he didn't quite go down that route enough, maybe.
I think he did create a weakness there, and I think if he wanted to set up something to be a finish, he had to make Andrade immobile, and then his reach and his natural size advantage would have started to tell its tale, and maybe got a finish at some point in that third round. But it just wasn't to be. But just because it wasn't to be the way we're saying it, it's easy to say while we're watching it. You have to remember there's a lot of anxieties and stresses and pressures on you when you're actually in there. And this kid, 29 years old, that's still young enough to be learning your lessons in there. And I think he'll look back and see that, oh crikey, I think I could have perhaps aimed at that leg a little bit more often, try to create something of a finish in hindsight, and maybe that'll make him make better choices in the coming fights. But as it was, that was a nigh on perfect performance. Played it very, very safe whilst being very aggressive as well.
Yeah, as what is it they say? Every day's a school day, mate.
Yeah, absolutely that.
And you can always learn. And I thought overall great performance by Mr. Murphy. Next up is Matt Schnell versus Tyson Nam. I went for Tyson Nam in this fight in our predictions on the last show. Which was the one I got wrong. With Schnell picked up the victory via split decision. This was a close one, I thought.
Yeah, it was, but I watched this fight twice actually. I watched it back because it did look like Tyson Nam was predominantly the one moving forward, particularly in rounds 2 and 3, and was certainly throwing the bigger shots, but they were missing a lot more than Schnell's was. Now Schnell was just countering with really nice, fast, sharp combinations. Nothing super complex. Sometimes he was throwing 3, 4, and 5 straight combinations, like literally straight hits, just peppering his shots in, and I think that was enough just to take enough of the judge's eyes to put it in his favour. He did look very, very calm. It was a little tit for tat. That's the only thing I say. It almost looked like a heavy sparring session rather than it did two people competing in UFC. So many times now we see these people in UFC try and make an impression. They hunt for that $50,000 prize money bonus, of fight of the night and so on and so forth. And they obviously want to make an impression for Dana White, but they both played quite a mature game. Maybe Tyson Nam was headhunting a little bit more and perhaps relying on trying to bed down his base to throw more powerful shots. But Matt Schnell looked just focused and looked like he had his wits about him literally at all times. And I think that was enough to edge it for the judging. And I think it went the right way on hindsight of watching it a second time around.
I'm happy to go with you, mate. I thought, heavy sparring session is kind of like an appropriate.
Yeah, it looked gentlemanly almost at times.
And you were almost waiting for one of them to really put some
stamp the authority.
Put a bit of stink on it and just really get at it. But
it
never quite came. But you get fights like that sometimes.
Yeah, of course.
But I thought Schnell was very clever in the way he went about his business.
Absolutely. Yeah, he looked he looked pretty smart in there. I just would have liked to have seen him try to stamp a little more authority on some of those rounds.
Yeah, sure. Next up then we had Vivian Arjo versus Roxanne Modafferi, with Vivian picking up the unanimous decision victory. Were you surprised by this going in?
No,
you would pick Roxanne.
I'm not at all surprised. It's just that Roxanne, Modafferi has really smothered her opponents in the past. She never looks, I can't say comfortable, doesn't look very coordinated, but she seems to just grind people down, and maybe because she's got this awkwardness about her, it's a little hard to read for some of her opponents, and she's had her successes. And from what I remember of seeing of Arajo, I think that might be pronouncing that name wrong, or Vivian, let's just say, she looked like she maybe didn't carry enough experience through to maybe deal with that. But yeah, she's clearly made an improvement. She looked very, very calculating. She was pretty much waiting for Roxanne to come in and was playing single shot counters and getting a lot of success with that. And then at times of her own attacks was, getting some nice combinations. Now, Roxanne really needed to get back to what she does best, which is muddling forward with strikes and then trying to smother the opponent against the fence and sort of grind the fight out of them. When she did that, she made some kind of basic errors really, in giving up her back quite early in that first round, and again in the second round when she tried to do a typical style, it was found with her giving up her back. And then in the third round, I think she became a little lost in ways of trying to get back into the fight, and looking a little bit awkward as she does. She just doesn't have anything regards an element of surprise. I think the way she has her fight game is you kind of know what she's going to do, but can't always stop it because she just grinds it through. But Arajo just showed some gaining maturity, and obviously improving on her technical game as well. Overall, showed really, really good wrestling, and she got the win, and deservingly so. Yeah.
Sweet. I missed this one, or I missed part of it. I saw bits of it, but
yeah. Had a bit of everything. There was a bit of striking there. There was a bit of wrestling there, and like I say, there was some wrestling aspects. You saw a little bit of groundwork, and Ferry looked a little bit lost there on the ground. She looked like she was struggling to find ways of either getting some kind of attacks going off her back, and certainly struggling with ways to get out. Although she did get back to her feet when needed to, but yeah.
Yeah, a couple of comments. Jay said that you pay for mistakes at the top level, and I think we saw that in a couple of fights.
Sure.
And Gaz said Schnell was so quick.
He was.
He's certainly quick.
So he was playing counter, and then wouldn't allow Tyson Nam to play counter because he was punching pretty much straight shots most of the time, and because he's punching.
Your headphones come out, mate.
Oh, hang on, no.
Just got a bit quiet. That's all.
I got a call come through. That's what happened.
There you are.
Yeah. He's punching with just straight punches predominantly, in clusters of up to 5. But because they were just straight punches, there was such small tempo timing to try to get the counter off. And he played the game really well. So that was well picked out.
Indeed. Next up, we had Ike Villanueva versus Vincese Moriea. I apologise, I'm not.
Mariah, I think, is that right? Mariah, yeah.
With Villanueva picking up the victory via KO of 39 seconds of the round 2, and quite the knockout this one was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it got caught right on the chin. But the thing is, with Mariah, he looked a little passive. He just looked like someone getting hunted, which is strange because he's a really big guy. He had clear size advantage, but it just looked like Ike, or how do you pronounce his second name, Villanueva. He just looked like he was the one hunting in there all the time. It looked like he was wanting to find ways to win, and Mariah was looking just to try and survive and maybe get an opportunity to get a quick win possibly. But he didn't look too comfortable in there, and it kind of surprised me because the stature of the man. You would have thought that a man that's got a clear size advantage like that would try to make the fight ugly and take center stage and take the center of the cage and try and push the smaller man back. But it wasn't to be. He was the one getting pushed back. And when you keep doing that, you're going to let your opponent grow in confidence, and those combinations are going to start coming through. And when you get confidence, you start seeing things more clear, and that chin started to present itself. And boy, did he find it. He clipped him right on the tip, and there was no way he was going to recover from it.
Yeah, he looked a bit confused after the fight was called off, but there was no way he could have continued. Not Mudaferi, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. The finish came as the second round got underway, and after a kind of interesting but uneventful first round, Ike just came out and he absolutely drilled Moriea with a right hook, and it caught him sort of on the chin and the mouth, and woof, he went down. And he was over just like that. And I know he looked a bit peeved and a bit frustrated by the finish, but he was also still unsteady on his feet as they went to the referee and and Bruce Buffer and stuff. So I don't think he can have any complaints, can he?
He got clipped good and proper, and the way he went down, of course, a ref's always going to step in to try and stop you receiving more damage. There was nothing wrong with that stoppage whatsoever. And with the way he was fighting, to be honest, if that wasn't to happen, then it was going to happen at some point, because it just looked like he didn't have anything much about him in there. He just didn't look urgent. Didn't look urgent in the way he should have been defending, and certainly didn't show no urgency in regards to his attacks. They were sloppy and slow, and it just didn't look dangerous in there. I was really surprised with him.
Sluggish.
Yeah, it didn't look great. He didn't look confident for whatever reason. Maybe he didn't have a great training camp. Who knows?
It's got to be difficult for these fighters, haven't it, with COVID and everything. Like the camps are just not going to be the same as what they would be if everything was as normal, like with sparring with different opponents.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, look, he's a really big guy. Maybe he didn't have the kind of caliber of big guys that he needed because of the situation around the world at the minute. We can only surmise these things, really. But I've seen him look better, put it that way. And I didn't feel like Ike was putting anything different into his game to make Mariah nervous in there. He wasn't being overly aggressive. So I was really surprised at his backpedaling game and backpedaling style.
Indeed. Next up, we had Warley Alves, the very experienced fighter, versus Monier Lazez, who has been he's called the Conor McGregor of Dubai. He was very impressive in his debut in the UFC. His kicks were incredible. He won against a very experienced fighter in Al Hassan. He was very much hyped up by the program and the UFC beforehand. This was clearly someone who they think is going to go far for them. And as Gaz has kind of put it quite nicely in the comments, he says the golden boy Laziz got smoked. And he did. 2 minutes 45 into round one. Wesley Alves took him out with 3 vicious kicks to the ribs. Definitely a broken rib in there, I think, mate. They sent him down. He covered up quickly, took a few shots, and wasn't long before Herb Dean was in there ending that fight. What did you make of this? Because he looked pretty good in the 2 minutes or so beforehand. He looked quite sharp, and then all of a sudden he took a nasty kick to the liver, and everything changed.
Yeah, really, he just couldn't get going, and Alves had no respect for his striking. The first thing he did was come out with that really low shin kick that really disrupted Lazez. Got him up against the fence really, really quick, which is obviously not what Lazez would want to be doing, and then got put on the ground very, very easily. It didn't look like he had a lot of know-how, to be honest, on the ground. He wasn't doing exactly fantastic things. He was literally just trying to get up in I wouldn't say a crude way. He was doing the right sort of things, don't get me wrong, and it got him back to the feet. But I just felt like we got a sense that he might be a little bit one-dimensional. Yeah. And, he got put down with those 3 rib kicks. I mean, the first one really hit home, and I think that was the one that did all the damage. The next 2 thereafter were done just purely because I think Alves said that he heard a crack. That would have been on the first one, and the next 2 hit on the forearm, but nevertheless were probably still getting some vibration through to that damaged rib. And he collapsed down and got finished very, very quickly thereafter that. I mean, if you're going to feel your ribs, I've had a separated rib numerous times, and you can't move once they go. So I can only but imagine what a cracked rib feels like. But it wouldn't be good. It won't be very nice. It immobilizes you. And so he just feetled up on the ground for the referee stoppage. But yeah, I just love looking at those 3 body kicks. I mean, it's very rare you'll see that off the same side. It was almost like pad drilling in a Thai boxing class. But like I say, he heard the crack and just went there again and again. So, yeah, okay, Lazez is known as an incredible striker, but got beaten by strikes.
Yeah. Jay asked a question. He says, do body shots kill you more than a big one on the chin?
Well, if you recover, so if you get back to your corner or you manage to smother your opponent after receiving a big hit, you can recover. You can shake off those, those cobwebs. Body shots, once you've been hurt to the body, it's like a dead leg. They kind of linger for the rest of the match. Once you've been weakened to the body, it's the same as getting weakened to the leg. You're just vulnerable there. But like I say, if you're rocked and you manage to get to the 1 minute rest period, you're kind of like, it's as if you've never been hit, other than the fact that it marks up on your scorecard. It doesn't make you easily knocked dizzy in the second round any more so than it was the first round. So yeah, definitely body shots and and leg kicks have more of a consequence to you once you've been hurt there.
Yeah, so some people might be confused because normally we put out our recorded episode around sort of this time, 8, 9 o'clock on a Wednesday. But today we're live. It's basically a convenience thing for us. Whilst eventually we are planning to take this show live, we're not necessarily looking to do that at the moment. But what didn't want to have to do is talk about 2 shows plus interview Jake on Sunday or for next week's episode. So for convenience for us, basically, we decided we were going to go live straight after. And ultimately, I think it's more fun to go live after the show's finished than try and do it like the Sunday, the day after, and then it doesn't go out until the Wednesday. As I said, our plan is obviously to go live eventually, but at the moment we're enjoying what we are doing, and I cannot wait for.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. It makes sense to do it this way, Si, because we got Jake Hadley on, and that's going to be really, really interesting to get to know the lad and to get his perspective on that. That match with Luke Shanks that had so much hype about it. It'd be great to get his perspective on it, on a one-to-one, and how he feels after it, whether there's still any ill feeling and so on and so forth. I'm really looking forward to it. So by doing this the way we've done it, it gives us more time to get to know Jack Hadley, and for the listeners too as well.
Yeah, exactly that, mate. But want to be able to. The whole point of having these great guests, which we've been having, is we want to be able to talk to them and interview them and have chat with them and stuff. And if you've got to rush through because you've got to talk about 2 shows, you're going to lose time with them. And I didn't want to do that. And plus, of course, Saturday, there's quite a big fight going on. You may know, and we'll be talking about that obviously as well. So it's interesting. And the other thing I will add is. The next 3 weeks after Jake, we've got 3 phenomenal guests. All new guests as well, never been on the show before. 2 UFC fighters, 1 male, 1 female, and a legend of MMA as well. So I urge you all to subscribe to the YouTube channel and don't miss the Danny Batten Fight Show every Wednesday. Got some phenomenal guests coming up. But the main event of the evening was Neil Magny versus Michael Chiesa. Obviously, we watched this together, mate.
Yes.
Virtually, obviously, because of COVID. We don't break the rules here. But we were discussing beforehand, this was a massive fight for both guys because it was almost like an eliminator to see who was going to make that break to try and fight the top tier of this division. Because this welterweight division is insane. Obviously, you've got Usman as the champion. Then you've got Colby Covington and Gilbert Burns, Leon Edwards, George Masvidal, they're kind of the top tier. And then you've also got Stephen Thompson, Tyron Woodley, Damian Maia. And then it's into Chiesa and Magny. And whoever won this fight was going to probably get, I think, Stephen Thompson next. And if they can get past Stephen Thompson, then you're into that group of huge names. And that's your chance. Neil Magny and Michael Chiesa, both about 30 odd. This is their chance now. This next couple of fights is make or break for them, whether they're going to ever make it to the top tier and the top table and get things like title shots. And I got to say, I did pick Michael Chiesa. I thank you. To win. You didn't. You picked Neil Magny, which I love to remind you of. But Michael Chiesa was very, very impressive, mate. I gotta say, I picked him because I felt his grappling was so good that if he got hold of Neil Magny, I didn't think Neil Magny would have the defensive skills to counter it. To put up, even if it went 5 rounds, I felt like Chiesa's grappling would just take over, and that really is how it went. I think we both agreed that. Magny won the second round, but we gave all 4.
I think it might be. I think it might have been the third.
Third was it?
I think it may have been the third. Yeah, I think he only won
4.
Yeah. Chiesa was he was using a real pronounced shoulder pressure to pin the position, so he was never going to get awesome ground and pound off with that kind of control. But what he was going to be doing is getting a high percentage of control per round, which is just going to keep racking up the rounds in his favour. So it was playing it a little bit safe on the ground. He wasn't really submission hunting, and he wasn't really trying to stop it with some some big punches and elbows, although we did see briefly, I think in the first round, he landed down a couple of elbows, which was looking quite aggressive. But thereafter, he was really trying to pin and control the position. I think partly because he felt how potentially active Magny was going to be in trying to scramble off his back. And it was actually Magny that come up with a couple of submission opportunities, and one of them quite weird. It was like an inverted triangle situation. It was a little bit unusual, maybe in round 4 or 5. But yeah, Chiesa overall, though, he just looked really, really, really strong in the wrestling. He looked like if it was going to go to the ground, it was predominantly going to be him able to get Magny down. And when he did, he was keeping it there long enough to keep pinching those rounds off. But Magny did excellent. To spend that much time on his back with someone like Chiesa on him and not getting submitted, not even getting put in any kind of danger submission-wise at all, goes to show you how savvy he had become and how aware he was. But nevertheless, that doesn't win fights. It helps you get through to the end of the fight like he did, but he was dropping those rounds. But never at one time did I feel that Neil Magny was thinking that he couldn't try to get this fight to be turned around. And that's the thing I love about Magny's style. At any time when he got back to his feet, it could be a knee, it could be an elbow or a punch. Anything that starts off something that gives him a sniff of a win, he suddenly becomes super, super dangerous. It just didn't happen enough for him. He had a couple of brief opportunities that looked like something might come of it, but Chiesa's cardio held up, and that's something that I thought might give out. That's why I went for Neil Magny. I just thought the latter rounds were going to go Magny's favour, and I thought he might start failing with the takedowns and getting caught with knees and elbows from the feet and possibly the ground if Chiesa tried to sit guard and sort of like try to bottom out under the pressure. It wasn't the case. Chiesa showed great conditioning, good game plan, and great control. But I think both of them should be commended on that performance, because I think a lesser fighter being put under pressure like Chiesa was doing would have been pinned and either struck out or being submitted.
So we've got a question about Chiesa, which I'll get to in just a sec. But yeah, I think that the one thing I was maybe a little disappointed with Chiesa was I felt with his dominance in the grappling throughout the fight, I felt like he could have really pushed up. He could have maybe I think it was the first round he got into mount and he postured a bit and he nailed some like 2 or 3 really slicing elbows across Magny's face, and I felt like that was an area where he could have really pushed on and attacked. And same with submissions, because of the positions he was getting in from his transitions and his grappling. I felt like if he had really pushed for it, he could have gone for that finish, whether it was through striking or submission. But he was happy to just dominate the fight and win, 4 rounds to 1 or whatever, which is, there's nothing wrong with that by any means. But that would be my one criticism of Chiesa. But again, like you, I would give a tremendous amount of credit to Neil Magny for being able to be under that amount of pressure. Without the pressure being poured on with strikes and submissions and stuff, he was still under a pressure. He was still having to defend grappling, and he did exceptionally well. 5 rounds, he must have been tired. They must have been tired after. But
of course,
Diaz says, he says Chiesa's transitions were so fast. Is that common, Danny, or is he a real high level?
Well, of course, his high level is in UFC, and he's known for his grappling in the UFC. So there's no 2 ways about it that he's high level. But what's making him look fast is more the fact that he is making Neil Magny quite slow. What I just emphasised about how he was very pronounced with his shoulder pressure. He was putting his weight very, very well. So although Magny was athletic enough to create opportunities to try to scramble and get movements going, which stopped it being a ball fest, to be honest, being that there's so much time on the ground, he was creating and forcing transitions from Chiesa. But he had the weight put on so well that Neil Magny was always having to carry his weight in some way in the turn and rotation to try and create movements. And that's why his transitions look so fast, because he made Magny look so slow. And don't get me wrong, he was quick, because Neil Magny's movements were so obvious, because he had to do them stuck in the mud with Chiesa's weight on him, that when he did try to transition, it was so obvious which way he was going to go. He just stepped a foot over, connected the seatbelt, put the pressure here, switched the pressure there. That's what was making him look so fluent and so fast. Because there's being fast, and then there's being sort of chaotic fast and not controlling fast. Never was he jumping in his hooks or jumping a submission. He was not doing anything fast in that way. He was transitioning fast merely because he was slowing down the movements of his opponent, and it was very, very skillfully done. It was beautiful to see.
Yeah, I commented to you, I think, when we were watching, about just his weight distribution and the way his weight was distributed in such a way that any time Magny had to move, just to make sure he didn't get his back taken or he didn't get put into mount or submission or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
he had to, like you said, he had to carry Chiesa's weight, which that's going to make it very, very tiring, isn't it? Anyway, it's tiring enough trying to defend the grappling as you're moving from position to position, but to do that with a full human body on top of you is very difficult. And again, he did it for 5 rounds, didn't get finished, didn't get submitted, so I think he deserves a tremendous amount of credit.
Yeah, absolutely. But you've got to give it to Magny. Any opportunity that he did create movements, he wasn't always choosing to scramble to his feet. He even tried to roll an E-bar at one point. An E-bar presented itself. So yeah, I mean, fair play to him. He was, confident enough to even go potentially submission on submission. Although we didn't see a counter submission being put on, he just defended that knee bar and continued to top control. But yeah, I mean, both impressed me. It was a good fight to watch. Okay, so it's kind of overshadowed by some of the performances that we have seen, particularly on last week's show. But as a martial artist, looking at what I saw was a beautiful thing. It was a great fight.
I'm kind of interested, actually, from your point of view. Like now, I'd assume that the next fight for Quiese is going to be Damian Maia, Tyrone Woodley, or Stephen Thompson. We don't know what's happening with Tyrone Woodley, so probably Damian Maia versus Stephen Thompson. Which fight do you think, if you're the UFC, are you going to put Quiese against? Which one?
I would like to see Quiese fight Maia. Damian Maia.
Be interesting.
Because I don't know how many more fights Damian Maia will have him. He's a real aging foe now, but he has that style that if he can push it into his arena of grappling, then he can kind of, really still display himself. If he's got someone who's got devastating striking, real young, aggressive, and great takedown defense, he starts looking really bad. He starts sitting guard, and it doesn't look very nice for Damian. But I think that matchup would actually look really, really good. And I'd love to see these two both have it out on the ground and clinching up against the cage. I think it'd be a super interesting match. If he was to fight Thompson, I just think he won't be able to get hands on him. I just think he's going to be too elusive.
Thompson's reach would just
I just think it's his timing and the way he throws combinations. It'd be a difficult one for him. But time again, I get proved I'm wrong. This is nothing more than my perspective on things. But I just think Damian Maia would be a better matchup. I think it would look great. I'll just be curious of their grappling exchanges, to be honest.
Yeah, and of course, all the names I mentioned, you've got Leon Edwards is up there just above Masvidal in third in the rankings, and of course you've got Chimaev, who's 15th, but effectively is in that top sort of 5 or 6 because eventually he's going to fight Leon Edwards one day, hopefully. I mean, my opinion with Damian Maia is, look, one of the all-time greats without doubt, one of the best BJJ MMA fighters there's ever been. He's right up there for me with his BJJ with the Gracies. But I just think at the moment, the last couple of years, or maybe last 18 months, or whatever you want to say, he's literally just so dependent on his grappling. Everything else has deteriorated a lot.
I think he made
a lot about the fighters recently, like going past their prime,
of course,
fighting after their prime.
I'm sure he said, because he started to learn how to strike and he started trying to do his striking, and then he found that it left him fatigued when he had the opportunities to shoot and grapple. He kind of took the edge out of himself, and also put himself at risk when he was striking with people, that he'd suddenly get struck and pay the consequences of that. He started to put the striking aside and concentrate on going back to what he knew to do best, which I think was a good move, especially seeing that when he made that decision, he was already in his late 30s. So he kept himself relevant. Is he ever going to be champion? No, I don't think he's ever going to be champion now.
Could Quiese be a champion, do you think, in welterweight?
I just think at the minute that division's a bit stacked up there. I can't see him beating the very, very top guys in that division, to be honest. As impressed as I am with that performance.
Do you think his striking's not good enough?
Yeah, I just think, that there's just other people with sharper tools, and I think he'll eventually come unstuck. But who knows? We're all training to improve. He might make those improvements to therefore make the advantages that an opponent would have less so, to a point where he will take the win over them. It's all about progression and opening your mind and being honest with your game, and then having the coaches to know how to put the improvements into your game so that you don't come up short against anyone. But he's certainly relevant to start having a punt at the top. And there's a few interesting matchups that I'd definitely like to see. But if I'm going to be a betting man, I'd say that he's not going to quite make the championship. He's not going to quite make it as champion, personally.
Yeah, I think he deserves to try. I just don't think he'll quite get there. But hey, I hope he proves me wrong. So to finish us off, mate, we're going to go with the predictions for UFC 257 on the weekend. I think let's have a quick look at the prelims just to make sure before I skip over them. Anyone in there? Khalil Roundtree Jr. is fighting in the prelims, and Brad Tavares, not against each other. Okay, we'll stick with the main card. So, we've got Jessica Ai versus Joanne Calderwood. Now that is a fight which I think is going to be
very hard to. Yeah, I'm going to go Jessica with this one, but it's so hard to pick a winner out of these two.
I will not have it. Joanne Calderwood is a legend. So Jessica Ai is ranked 6. Joanne Calderwood is ranked 7. They got very similar records, both 5'6", both same weight, similar half an inch reach and difference.
Good fight.
Half an inch reach difference. So Jessica Ai's got half an inch reach difference with the arms, but Joanne Calderwood's got half an inch reach advantage with the legs. They're so closely matched.
Yeah.
But Joanne Calderwood for me has got knockout power. She's won 36% of her fights by KO or TKO.
Right.
Whereas Jessica Ai's won 73% of her fights by decision. So I just think I'm going with Joanne Calderwood, the Scottish lady. She's gonna bring it home for the UK, mate. And I think you should be ashamed of yourself.
I hope she does. But I'm just not too sure.
Of yourself for going against the Brit. Next up, we have Matt Frivolia versus Othman Azitea in a lightweight bout. I'm going to guess and say you're not massively familiar with these two.
No, I think that Othman, I think
Othman Bulldozer Azitea, 13-0 from Morocco.
Yeah.
They're pretty much exactly the same in terms of height, reach, and stuff. Matt Friviola's got an inch height and an inch reach advantage. I'm going to go with the unbeaten Moroccan Othman the Bulldozer.
Yeah, that's who I'd go with. Yeah.
Okay. And then we've got the big boys, the big fights. We've got the co-main event, a lightweight bout. Effectively, I believe this is an eliminator for the title, but we'll see. It is Dan Hooker versus Michael Chandler, making his debut in the UFC. The Brit. No, he's not a Brit, is he, Michael Chandler? I always think he's British. Michael Chandler making his debut in the UFC. Where do you think he's going to beat the Hangman, Dan Hooker?
I think this is a bad stylistic match for him for his first fight in UFC. It could prove me wrong. If anyone can pull off a win when I'm doubting him a little bit, it could be Chandler. But he's given away height advantage, reach advantage. He's going to have to go in with big combinations and shoot and try and smother Hooker. And Hooker's so good at fighting outside. He'll fight on the outer fringes of the cage, but use footwork and elusivity. If Hooker falls into the trap of trying to trade, he could get hit hard and then shot in under and get underneath him and get him to the ground, and then it could be a difficult night for him. But I think it's all for Hooker to win. I just think he's got the credentials, the sort of like physical stats to make it hard work for Chandler, and it's going to be Chandler trying to find a way around those issues to try and get the win. If he don't find answers early on, he's gonna be stuck on the outside and keep letting those rounds slip away.
I'm going to go with, as you know, I'm not Michael Chandler's biggest fan in terms of being a fighter. I think it's a bit unfair on him to put him in against Dan Hooker in his UFC debut. However, the age he's at and he's coming in off a couple of wins. I can see why he wants to go straight in there at the top. But, if he goes in there and smokes Dan Hooker, then he's got big, he's got big credentials for that when this title situation is sorted out. As we talked about last week, Khabib has said he's watching this and the main event very, very closely.
Right.
He said he's not going to hold up the division, which to me says he's going to fight one of the 4 guys in the main event or the co-main event, or he's going to drop it and fight GSP. Either way, I'd say the winners of both these fights have got a fair shot to say, well, hang on, I should be in the title picture. But I'm going to go with Dan Hooker for this one. I think he'll just be too much for Michael Chandler.
I think so as well. But I want personally, in my heart, I want Chandler to win because I think there's more interesting matchups. I really do want to see those matchups. But I'd love to see him against someone like McGregor. I think that'd be a great matchup because he'll trade a bit with McGregor, but he's still got the shoot opportunity to sort of like throw into the mix. But he will trade at times with McGregor. It'll be super interesting.
Yes.
We shall see. We shall see.
It would be a strike fest, mate, I think.
Yeah.
So then we have the main event, my friend. The main event of the evening. The notorious Conor McGregor makes his return and a rematch versus Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier has been grinding since he last faced Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor has done all sorts of crazy stuff over that time, whether it's boxing, whether it's winning 2 titles, knocking out a legend in Jose Aldo in, 13 seconds.
Yeah.
He's done a lot. One thing I did want to say before we make our predictions for this one, just as we kind of preview it, I was watching the UFC preview of this fight, and then they were kind of breaking down the original fight between the two. And they focus very much on the mind games beforehand. And, look, Conor McGregor is very good at that sort of stuff. He gets under his opponent's skin. That's how he beat Jose Aldo, as he got Aldo so emotional that he made an error. Conor McGregor planned for that error, and that was what she wrote. And whilst he did get under Dustin Poirier's skin, and he did get inside his head a little bit, I thought he actually beat him because he was the better fighter on the night. Technically, he set him up beautifully for the finish by doing certain things. And you were talking about Conor's movement in that fight and the way he set him up for the finish. So I think sometimes, because of everything which goes on outside the cage with Conor McGregor, people don't always give him the respect that maybe he deserves as a fighter, and he certainly his fight IQ in terms of setting up people. What do you think about that?
Yeah, look, he's an incredible striker. He's got incredible movement, awareness of his own range. I don't think he's the best defensive striker when someone's putting it on him. I think we've seen him fall foul at times, but why he's got fresh and energy in him, man, he's just a laser beam precision. He's got clear, incredible power. He's fast. He's quite diverse in his strikes as well. He's not a typical leg kicker. You don't see him bashing proper hard leg kicks, but he does go hard to the midsection, hard to the head. He's got that really rangy spinning heel kick. And that cross hand, that cross left hand of his is absolutely devastating. So, yeah, I'm going to have to stick with McGregor on this one. The issue I always have with McGregor really in recent times is the fact that he's so long out. between fights, and he's.
I think in this case, it's not actually down to him, though. I think the UFC didn't want to bring him back until there was fans back. Is my opinion.
Yeah.
Because he said straight after the Cerrone fight, because he beat Cerrone in a minute, and he looked as focused and as fresh and as sharp as he did in his run up to winning those titles, and he had said, like, I want to fight straight away, and with COVID and lockdowns and restrictions, I just don't think the UFC wanted him. You know, they want Conor McGregor, they want on pay-per-view with fans there so they can maximise their money, which, you know, I understand that fully. Is it a coincidence that we've got fans back in the stadium, albeit not a full stadium, and Conor McGregor's back the second week?
I just lost you there for a few.
You've gone a bit fuzzy, fuzzy, Dan. If you have gone a bit weird, just go out and in again, mate. We're wrapping up now anyway. Danny's gone fuzzy. Let's go back.
Yeah, we're back. Yeah, lost you for a few seconds there, sorry.
That's all right. No worries, mate. So yeah, I'm going to go with Conor McGregor. However, I would say Dustin Poirier is not one to take lightly, but I just think Conor McGregor is the better fighter. And I think when people get lost sometimes on all the other things, and they forget that he is just good. He's a good fighter. Khabib is a special fighter. Nate Diaz was a way up. They're the only two people he's lost to in the UFC. I think when you look at that and you look at then the people he's beaten and how he's beaten them, you know.
Yeah, it's very hard to be. You know, even though I'm picking out McGregor, it's very hard to be super confident either or. To be honest, yeah, Poirier's not the fighter that he used to be. You know, he's hugely more experienced. This is now done at a different weight as well. Whether that makes a difference or not, probably not, because they're probably naturally growing in size as they get older. But yeah, Poirier's he's done so much since they last fought, so that really could be something that he could use to bring differences from their previous fight and make difference enough to pull off the win in his favour. I certainly wouldn't be writing him off, but I just think that precision and that outright power and the movement of Conor McGregor will pose him more opportunities to win than Poirier.
Yeah, I mean, their stats are so even, like even from their records, like Poirier's 26-6 with 1 no contest. McGregor's 22-4. They're both 5'9". McGregor's got a 2-inch reach advantage. Their like knockout stats are 86% for McGregor, 50% for Poirier. Decisions, Poirier's got 27%. McGregor's only got the 9%. Their average fight time, which I was quite surprised by this, how even it is. Poirier's is 8 minutes 55. McGregor's is 8 minutes 20. So actually, they're really evenly matched up.
Right.
Obviously, McGregor's got the kind of strike advantage in terms of finishing fights via knockout and stuff like that. But even like their grappling statistics, their significant strikes, they're 49%, both of them. They're so evenly matched that their takedown defense is 69 and 70%. Their takedown accuracy, McGregor's is 62 and Poirier's 41, and they're so evenly matched that I think you'd be silly to say one's going to definitely win.
Definitely win, yeah. You just can't with these two.
It's fighting at the end of the day, mate. You know, we talk about it all the time. You know, anything can happen. For me, it's McGregor. I think he's going to go on and he's probably going to win the lightweight title, or he's going to at least fight for the lightweight title. I'd be very interested to see who he fights for it, for me. Because I don't think Khabib wants to fight him again, for whatever reason. I don't think he's interested in that fight. I think Khabib would fight Dan Hooker. I think Khabib would fight Chandler. I think Khabib would probably fight Tony Ferguson. He'd probably fight Dustin Poirier. Charles Oliveira, he's mentioned. I don't think he wants to fight Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor wants, if he decides he wants that title, they're going to have to make a decision one way or the other.
Yeah. I don't think Khabib will be going over old ground. I just don't think he wants to do it as a desire to, especially as he's already said that he's retiring. He won't come back to do something that he's done before.
They have started exchanging insults again, which is always a sign that maybe, just maybe. I would love to see Justin Gaethje versus Conor McGregor. I've got to be honest.
That would be a very, very good match.
That's the one for me, or even Ferguson versus McGregor. Although Ferguson at the moment, I'm not so sure, but Dan Hooker versus McGregor. Yeah,
if McGregor wins, if Ferguson doesn't make sense because he's lost his last two, so I don't know. Doesn't make sense, but McGregor would gain nothing by fighting him after he's had 2 losses in a row. It's hardly putting a feather in your cap at this time.
Yeah, I think Gaethje is probably the one fight outside of the title which might interest him. Okay, so that's the show. That's the UFC. That's our live special. Just because we didn't want to talk about him on Sunday. Thank you to everyone who's joined us and commented. Thank you for the super chats, and we'll be back. Obviously, next Wednesday we'll have a new show out with our special guest. We'll be talking all things Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, plus the latest news and everything else. Subscribe to youtube.com/A.C.E Podcast Nation for all our latest shows. I am back live tomorrow night with Super Kevin McNaughton for Super Kevin Scripted Live, episode number 6. Always a fun time. This one is completely different to everything else we do. Basically, we get some drinks in, we have a load of would you rather questions, we have people set the subject, we talk about whatever comes up, whether it's Kev's career, football, whatever we want to talk about, whatever people ask us to talk about, and we just have a good laugh, take our minds off lockdown and COVID and everything for an hour or so. And then Friday we're back with the Andy Campbell Championship Show, 7 o'clock as usual. Join us. Until then, Danny, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you, Si. It's been great, and thank you people who tuned in to take time out to listen to us old folk chatter about UFC.
I'm not old, mate. I'm not old, mate. I got a baseball cap that makes me young. Makes me young. It's not to hide my horrendous lockdown haircut, which I did to myself. I don't know what you're talking about. Indeed. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Tune in next Wednesday for the next episode of Danny Batten Fight Show. But check out all the other shows on A.C.E Podcast Nation. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Spread the word. And, of course, you can download the audio version at all the usual podcast platforms. Just search A.C.E Podcast Nation and you'll see a load of episodes of Danny Batten, Andy Campbell, interviews, exclusive interviews, actors, all sorts of stuff, conspiracy theories, serial killers, just everything you could possibly think of. If you join me tomorrow night live, Super Kevin Scripted, you don't have to be a football fan, just come and join us and have a good laugh. Thank you, people. Thank you, Danny. Good night.
Thank you.
Defending champion, welcome